Hey guys, welcome to episode 35 of The Green Life. I'm really excited about today's episode where we dive into a raw conversation into feelings, spiritual growth, and food, of course. But before we get there, a big shout out to my sponsor, Well. The Nama J2 juicers are the new kids on the block when it comes to cold press juicing at home. The Nama J2 is beautiful to look at, easy to use, easy to clean, and trust me when I say the juices taste amazing. Amazing. If you want to upgrade as well, you can go into the show notes for the link and my discount code for 10% off. Okay, back to the episode. Today I have a beautiful guest, Bella Mahaya Carter. Bella is passionate about writing and healing, and really her work is a testament of her own journey, going from a caterpillar to a butterfly who is now spreading her wings, helping other writers, artists, and healers navigate work and life from the inside out. In addition to teaching, she loves coaching new and established authors. And her new book, Where Do You Hang Your Hammock, is a beautiful resource for writers if you want to get out of your head and onto those pages. Today we're going to talk about the other book, Raw, My Journey from Anxiety to Joy. And it's such a beautiful journey, and I really recommend this book because it is so relatable. But before we get into the conversation, I just want to share a little bit more about Bella's because her background is so eclectic. I love it. She studied dance at Juilliard, then she went to study cinema and screenwriting at the University of Southern California, and then she went to get herself a degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. I think everything fits perfectly together, and even with her personality and her beautiful light. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Without further ado, let's get there. Welcome, Bella. Hi, Bella. Thank you so much for joining The Green Life today. How are you?
Oh, I'm really well. Thank you for having me, Chantal.
My pleasure. You are really inspiring. So I didn't get to know you too long ago, I must say. I stumbled upon you on Fully Raw Christina's website. I kind of applied for her inner circle. And so, because I'm learning a lot more about raw food, and she had an interview with you, and I absolutely loved it. So I immediately got your book or your books. And the book Raw really spoke to me. And I thought I need to have you on the show. I love the book is not just about food, but it goes really into raw emotions and at different levels. So you really broke it down into the food, into the body, the spirit, and the mind. And it's just the way that we are meant to look at our health. And I love holistic approaches to health. So you nailed it that way. And I love that it's such a personal experience, and you didn't really hold any punches. You wrote about how you felt. And I also love that every time I read a word and I read a scene, I can see it. That's a really, I think, a testament to a very good writer. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That's lovely. This is really lovely of you to say that. Thank you.
Is the truth. So if people don't know you and they kind of now wanting to learn a little bit more, let's just give them a little bit of your story, which is also very fascinating. And you can intertwine to your journey into your book, obviously, because this is really what it's about.
Yeah, well, sometime, maybe it was, I'm trying to think how long ago, maybe 20 years ago, I had chronic stomach problems. And the only thing my doctor could do was prescribe medication. And I thought to myself, well, I really want a cure, not a cover up. I knew that the medication might mask the symptom or might help the symptoms, but I thought I really want to cure this. And it made sense to me to think, well, if I'm having problems with my stomach, shouldn't I think about what I put into it? And so I started reading. I read lots and lots of books, and I discovered that people were curing all kinds of maladies with a raw food diet. And it seemed very extreme to me. And I was afraid to do it, didn't want to do it, hemmed and hawed. But the truth was, I had exhausted my possibilities with the doctor, and I was desperate. So I said, okay, well, I'll try this. And I tried it, and amazing things began to happen. The lines on my face started going away. I had toenail fungus that disappeared. I had more energy than I'd had in years. So it was really, really great. But it wasn't, after like 6 months of doing this, it wasn't the panacea that I had thought that it would be. And I thought, well, maybe there's more healing to go. Maybe there's a mental component to my physical distress, which was still manifesting as pressure in my chest and just stomach discomfort. So I thought, well, okay, what would a raw food diet for the mind look like? And then around this time, I heard about this master's degree program in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica. And I went to an information evening, and they were asking questions like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And I was realizing that at the age of 40, let's say 40-ish, I had felt like a failure in my life. I felt like I hadn't really accomplished the things that I thought I should by this time in my life. And it just kind of made me aware of a lot of thinking that I had that was interfering with me showing up in the world in the way that I really wanted to show up. And so that was kind of like, that was the mental, and there was also a spiritual component to that. And then there were actually mystical experiences that happened later on. But that was the beginning. The original subtitle of the book was A Midlife Quest for Health and Happiness. And I learned throughout the process of writing the book that I was struggling with anxiety. It was kind of very low level anxiety. And it wasn't until we had 5 family deaths in 3 years, and I was executor of my mom's estate, when it actually just came. I just had a full-on anxiety disorder. I was afraid to leave my house. Like, the anxiety just went from like this quiet little percolating thing underneath what was going on in my life to an explosion. So it really has been quite a journey to understand myself and to heal myself. And that journey began with what I put into my mouth. What was I eating? How was I fueling this body container of mine?
Yeah. So your book starts actually with the body, but I would like to go first into the other two chapters.
Right.
One reason is I feel that well, what we put in our body is super important, of course, and but I relate also to the other aspects, because a lot of times we do what's in front of you, which is, well, I eat all the time, so I eat every day, so I better eat it right, and I'm fixing my diet, and you sort out so many things, but then at some point, the dark night of the soul comes, and that's because you haven't addressed a lot of other stuff that was within. So I know a lot of women that are listening to the podcast are going through that now, and I learned from Dr. Northrop that we go through that as we start perimenopause in our early 40s, and it can happen earlier. For me, it happened last year, 2 years ago, where I just hit the wall. And not only did I stop looking after myself with my food, I was eating a vegan diet, but very just processed food for the most part. Even if I was eating at home, it was like, lots of pasta. I went kind of back to my childhood comfort foods, as my grandmother is Italian, so she's like, pasta all the time. And
Me too.
exactly. And I kind of really didn't feel well. And then all these emotions started coming out, and I still am working through them. So I think a lot of people will benefit from actually looking at that at the same time. Now, I'm not saying that you have to look at that first if you're not nourishing yourself with your food, because I think if we're not clean inside, we can't create pathways in our brain. We don't feel well. Our digestive system is not healthy, and we can even have anxiety because of that. But if you can take me through the emotional part, and what it was like for you to have that haha moment that I'm like, oh my gosh, I really need to address this, and how am I going to do it?
Well, I have to say that I was distracted by something that you said. My mind just sort of went right to it. So let's pause on the question for a moment and just look at this idea about not being clean inside.
Mm.
That's really interesting. That's interesting language to me. And I think on a psycho-spiritual level, what I learned, which really helped a lot, is that my natural state is clean.
Mm.
And however you interpret that word clean, I'm using it in the sense of my natural state, our natural state is love.
Mm.
And then our psychological state That's where the problems get caused, but the solutions happen on a spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
The problems happen on a psychological level. So what that means is that the mind gets very busy, and it tells us a lot of stuff. And what happened for most of my life was that I didn't know my mind was doing that, so I was fused with my thinking. So that means that all of my insecure thought, and there was tons of it, all of my doubts, all of my fears, just so much mental activity, and because I'm an imaginative person, right? I think we all are imaginative. So I would make up stories and I would scare myself. And I think that the biggest healing for me occurred when I began to understand that all of that insecure thought that I had, it was just insecure thought. It wasn't me. It wasn't true. It wasn't my essence. My essence is clear, clean, light, love. And so then the question becomes, well, how come that's not my experience in my life? How come that I'm not feeling that all the time? And it really is, I think, because of all of the mental activity that just hijacks us.
Mm. Yeah.
So if I didn't answer your question, feel free to rephrase it.
No, that was actually a very good introduction to the question, the answer to the question, because from that, I would like you to then develop into your experience, like the first thing that you looked into, and then the connection that you started making from the point of the aha moment.
I'm not sure I understand your question. So maybe you could be a little more clear in terms of, at what stage in the journey, because the journey took place over many years.
So when the first time you looked into the spiritual part, when you realized that you were grieving, what was that you had this grief inside, that you had this pain, that you had this loss that you haven't really processed? What was the first thing that you went into, and then from there, what was the next connection? So like how did it develop into this really deep dive into your spirituality? Because obviously you didn't go straight to the center of it. You had to start and putting this.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I understand that now. I think the first step really was this question: what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Because I had all these dreams. I had all these things I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I wanted to speak. I wanted to teach. I wanted to coach. And I don't know. I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't believe in I had a lot of fear. I mean, I did some really cool things, but I just didn't show up and wasn't showing up in the way that I really wanted to show up, in the way that I felt called to show up.
Mm.
So asking that question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Was one thing, but then like the answer to that question is there is no such thing as failure. There are only opportunities for growth.
Mm.
And then I started approaching life with a learning orientation. So whenever things got difficult, I would say, well, what if this is my teacher? And I would ask, how can I love this too?
Mm.
How can I love myself while I'm in this crappy situation that I'm not really enjoying? But what is there for me to learn here? And that shift of perspective, life is a big school. We're in life school.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I here to learn? And maybe I can quit judging myself and quit thinking I'm not good enough, which has been, which for me personally has just plagued me my whole life. I grew up with this idea that if I wasn't outstanding, I didn't deserve to exist, which is ridiculous. And yet, it's old, it's old, it's ancient, it's inherited, and it is prevalent in our society.
Yeah, exactly. That I was gonna say, so many of us feel that way because of the programming that we have. It's like if you're not busy all the time, you're not productive, which we know if you dive into, I'm gonna say spirituality as well. We are meditating. When you're meditating, you're not technically doing anything other than going inwards, and that's very productive because you're making space for then the next step to be clearer, calmer, to be more grounded. And I feel, from your demeanor, you are there, like you are very grounded through, it's a beautiful energy that just comes through, and it
Aw.
comes through the pages in your book as well, because you can see the struggle through the journey, and then that moment where you're like, I need to go inwards, and this feels good. So I have a question about
Wait, before your question,
yeah,
can I
yeah,
say something? Can I respond to what you just said?
of
Because wow,
course.
you said so much just there. Wow, I just love I love you. I just really love you. I love the way you think. I love your, this is awesome. So there were two things that you said. You talked about meditation as going inward, and I just wanted to kind of add to that,
Mm,
that I think of meditation as quieting my mind so that I can experience my essence.
mm,
Um, because again, the mind is so busy that it just is distracting.
yeah. And do you feel
And
like your essence is quiet? Do you feel like your essence is quiet?
oh, my essence is absolutely quiet. My
Mm.
mind is crazy. My
Yeah.
mind never stops. My mind, and that's why I laughed when you talked about, oh, you're so grounded. And I think in some ways, yes, that's true. I'll agree with you, but you should see the struggle. I mean, like, I am a work in progress, and I'm actually kind of glad that this conversation is moving in the direction of the spiritual, because when I was working on this book and I was shopping the book proposal, people wanted me, agents and editors wanted me to be a raw food expert.
Mm,
I felt like that wasn't me. Like, that's not what I'm here to teach.
mm,
That was part of my journey to, like, I was just doing what I had to do to get here. But really what I'm here to teach is something much more spiritual.
hmm. Yeah, I exactly. That's what came to me when I read your book, and when we go into the food part, we can talk about how the food supports that. But to me, that's what jumps out of the pages. Like you're diving into and exploring into that research of inner self and growth. That's really what it's about, because ultimately that's where you had to deal with a lot of inner struggles that food couldn't sort out.
That's
So,
right.
and I think it's all about. So, when you said, society puts so much pressure, and we have that again, that kind of messaging all the time, that we have to be busy, we have to be achieving things, being whatever path you choose to be in, whether you're a banker or you're a writer or a chef, you have to do these grandiose things, otherwise you're a failure. That is just putting us in a place where we're not even reaching our potential, because our minds go where you feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, this is not, look at that person, he's doing so much more. And our paths are so different and so specific to us in our journey, so that we can affect the people around us in a certain way. So what you have done now, you produced something that can help other people, because the things that are in the book are really, they resonate to anybody that is looking within and looking for something deeper. So I can totally see that that's where you'll feel called, because that's the stronger part of our path on this planet, because eventually we leave, and when we leave, what is our impact? It's not going to be the beautiful cakes you made, or the thousand books you wrote. It's going to be, how did I impact other people, where
Yeah, yeah. And also, as you're talking, I'm thinking that it seems to me that the real struggle is to just be fully present
mm, yeah.
and to, really be in the moment. And the moment is always creative.
Mm,
It's something, every moment is a new moment. We haven't lived it before, and it's creative, but we try, at least I try, in my fear and in my angst, I try to control it. I try to manage it. I try to just make things go my way, and I'm like constantly grappling and struggling and resisting what is. And that over the last few years, the lesson of surrender has really, I remember one time, like, there was a time, I don't remember when this was, but I was just, everything felt very chaotic. And in my meditation practice, one day I didn't hear it like you hear voices, but I just got a very clear message, and the message was, slow down.
mm,
And I was like, but I don't want to slow down. Like I'm having fun. I'm doing things. I'm busy, it's good. But I also knew, even though there was a part of me that was resisting that message, a part of me felt like, wow, that is great wisdom. Slow down. And then the next day I got another message. It was kind of like it all happened, it unfolded in like a week. It was slow down, let go, stop fighting, and trust life.
Mm.
And I keep returning to those simple instructions.
Yeah.
Slow down, let go, stop fighting, trust life. Wow. I mean, if I could do that, I could do anything, and it's a process and a practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you were also raised Catholic. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you'll relate to this. So I was, and I always felt so oppressed by the the structure that wasn't connecting us to the Most High. But when you say those words, like slow down, let go, trust, and that's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he says, because he's got everything under control. He's like, I know exactly what your purpose is. If you let me speak to you, you will be able to hear it. You'll be able to fulfill it. Stop trying to do what your mind says, what society says. So when you say those words, that's exactly what I saw, because this is the things that I every day in my meditation, I remind myself to listen to those words, same guidance, because I do get also very caught up in my head and the things that I need to do. I'm a very practical person, so I'm
Yeah.
just like, I have to do 5 things, I'll do 10, and then I'm
Right,
exhausted.
right, right, right.
Yeah, and so yeah, what you said there is just boom. And this is another reason why a lot of people don't understand that spirituality and our creator are one thing, and that religion doesn't reflect that. But it's a shame, because that means also that they lose the opportunity to listen to this higher voice, this higher calling of some of this presence that not only created us but loves us unconditionally. And as you said at the beginning, our state of being is pure love, right? Because we're him, we're part of him.
Right. And,
So yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, go
I was
ahead.
I was just thinking of that famous piece of scripture, which is the kingdom of God is within. And
Mm,
I don't know, like I haven't really studied scripture much. Maybe it was Jesus who said that. I'm not sure. I'm sorry for those of you who have studied scripture, but the kingdom of God is within,
yeah,
and what that means to me is that each one of us like our essence is God.
yeah.
And what that means to me is love.
Hmm.
And when we actually, connect with that place, so much is possible. But
Yeah,
most of the time we're just busy, like with religion, there's all sorts, there's rules and there's, social faux pas. And I mean, there's just restrictions. And, so religion isn't, it is not necessarily spirituality.
yeah,
It's, I mean, I think religions try I mean, I can remember, when I was a Catholic child, God just seemed like this, kind of powerful, judgmental, scary person in the sky. Like
yeah,
although, well, actually, I have to change what I'm saying here, because I always knew that there was something magical or miraculous inside of me that was safe and loving and um, appealing. And maybe at times I attributed that to God. I knew it was bigger than me. I knew it wasn't me. I knew it was something large and, like universal, like we must all have this. But I don't necessarily think, like when I went to church, I was more concerned about being judged
mm,
for my sins and being afraid. Although, that too isn't entirely true, because there certainly were moments when I was in church as a kid maybe when I was singing, liturgical music, which I love, when maybe I did feel it. But
Yeah.
it's not about the thinking of it. It's about the feeling of it. It's about knowing it in a visceral way. And when I say it, I'm referring to knowing who we really are on a visceral level, and that we're not these bodies. We're something much bigger.
Absolutely. I'm sorry for the dogs in the background, by the way. You nailed it. And with the danger of going into a discussion about religion, I think I understand exactly what you mean. And internally, we feel that connection because we are part of him. But of course, the structures around him must put a preconception in our mind about what is what, how he is, and I think I experienced that too, which is why I had to leave religion and really just find my path. Um, which took me back to reading scriptures not long ago. But I also dove into actually more esoteric scriptures, which are not included in the Bible that religions use, but actually are very much part of it and are even mentioned in the Bible. So it's a very interesting journey, but I think that really allowed me to dive into what they call New Age in a way that I actually understand what it means. And it has brought so much more stability in my heart and my soul than anything has done before. Even if I'm a yoga teacher, I used to teach yoga and say the right things, but sometimes I just didn't feel it until I did this inner work. Well, I think hitting the wall for you was, having this stomach problem and really having to dive deep. And for me was making myself sick, having a nervous breakdown, and really just putting myself together again, exploring and going
Yeah.
within and making some very hard choices. For me was, having to cut some ties with family, some family members that, you can love someone, but you just don't necessarily are on the same vibrational level at this point in your life. And so you have to really let go, and let go and trust the process. Um, but yeah, it's been unfolding that way. But before we go to food, because eventually we have to go to food. That's my bread, pun intended.
I don't know. I'm beginning to wonder. Like I'm thinking there's more to what you have to say than food, obviously.
Oh yeah, of course. But a lot of people are here to actually listen to the raw food as well, and I really want to talk about that because it's a beautiful journey I'm on as well. But there was one scene into your in your book, and I call it scene because I was seeing it. You were looking for this holistic psychiatrist, which is something I never came across. And I would love you to elaborate a little bit. What is an holistic psychiatrist, and what was your experience with it?
Well, uh, what I believe in holistic healing. I believe that healing on the level of the body also involves the mind and the spirit. And one of my pet peeves with traditional psychology, I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And one of my pet peeves with psychology is that the root of the word psychology is psyche, which means soul. And
Mm,
yet traditional psychologists, they're not trained to include the soul in the equation of the conversation.
mm,
And so to me, that's problematic. Sort of the same thing with medical professionals. And since I was struggling mentally and I was thinking maybe a psychiatrist would be a good idea, I know that in my experience, psychiatrists tend to prescribe medications that can be helpful, but I knew that wasn't my path.
mm,
I didn't want to do that. I knew that the anxiety that I was experiencing, which was debilitating, I was afraid to leave my house, as I mentioned earlier. Um, and my doctor prescribed Xanax, but I had known people who had gotten addicted to those kinds of drugs. And so I really looked at my anxiety, and as uncomfortable as it was, I tried to approach it as, what can I learn? What is this here to teach me?
mm.
And, but I thought if I could find a psychiatrist who had a holistic background, uh, that would be helpful. That would be good. And I found somebody, but it turned out to be a terrible match.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was really, yeah, we just kind of didn't like each other.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, it was I would leave his office in tears, but not like healthy tears. but just because I felt like he didn't see me, he didn't listen to me, he didn't understand me, he was making assumptions about me that didn't feel true. It just really was a mess.
Mm.
So I actually, that led me to someone else, and then to someone else. And I found the help that I needed. But, all the while I understood that, and I think this is really important for people looking for any kind of help, whether you're looking for a writing coach or you're looking for a therapist or whatever you're looking for, you're in the driver's seat.
Mm.
I was in the driver's seat. And again, I had to be very connected and tuned in to to my essence, to that part of me that is divine, that part of me that knows, because there is a part of all of us that knows. And when we cultivate our trust in the part of us that knows, we stop running around like chickens with our heads cut off, looking for other people to tell us what to do. And we get guidance from our own inner wisdom, and we make decisions from there. And learning how to do that has saved my life.
Mm. Yeah. Ah, yes. I'm in. Yeah. I think most of us can say when we listen to that intuition, when we stand still and really hear our our inner calling, our inner voice, magic happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so easy to give away our knowing, to
Mm.
give it away, to look to other people. It's so easy. It's so tempting. It's what we're trained to do. Other people are experts, other
Yeah.
people have all this knowledge. But I knew after, I knew the first time after I left his office crying, I was like, oh, this isn't good. But I went back, it happened again, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And I finally just said to him, this isn't good.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be really hard to listen to that small voice because it's small and it's quiet.
Mm.
And so if our minds are busy, which they are, that's like the nature of a mind. They tend to be very busy. They're trying to figure so much out. There's so much going on. It's busy in there.
Yeah.
That's the point of meditation,
Yeah.
to slow that down, to readjust the focus, to quiet the mind so the soul can speak. The soul is always speaking. It's more like quiet the mind so you can hear what the heck is the soul is saying to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you laugh, hopefully, but I kind of relate to that experience. I had this, I started seeing this coach when I was having a hard time online, so it was during lockdown, and she kept on talking about my inner child, which I appreciated because it's true. I had to go down and do a little bit of digging into my childhood to see what that little child was needing and was coming through into my adulthood. But she had a way to really peeve me off, and then she kept on saying, but no, it's because you are not listening to your inner child. I'm like, no, I'm listening to my inner child, and she's even upset with you. Like, enough. I was just like, you and I cannot work together. This is not gonna. My inner child is gonna kick me because you're just pissing her off.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no. But it took me a while, and I was like, why am I leaving these coaching sessions so angry? You know?
Yeah, I think actually that's a great point that I want to mention, and that is that we can trust the feeling.
Hmm.
The mind will make up all kinds of stories. It'll, but at the end of the day, like, our bodies are our barometers.
Hmm.
So if we're feeling like no, then it's a no.
Yeah.
No matter who, like no matter what the mind is ruminating over or imagining or trying to figure out, the body knows. And really more specifically, the heart. Man, if you can tune into your heart. I mean, I often just place my right hand on my heart, my left hand on my belly, and I close my eyes and I just try to just kind of zero in and just like say, okay, heart, what do you have for me?
Yeah.
I'm here and I am listening. I am listening. I have this thing I keep on my bulletin board near my desk, and it just says,
Listen. Mm.
listen. And I feel like really, uh, at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, that and throughout the day, that is my challenge and that is my joy and that is my opportunity throughout whatever I'm going through. That's what I'm learning.
Absolutely. And while you had to do all this work, obviously, even inner work and hard work, did you get support from your family? Your
I have a
husband, your child?
I have a super supportive husband.
Beautiful.
And I do have a pretty supportive family just overall, I would say. Yes. And yeah, I would say yes. I
Brilliant.
was supported. I mean, I guess I'm hesitating because I wasn't like, this is just, I think, a truth of life. It's
Mm.
like you're not supported 100% of the time. At least I was. I mean, the people who love you support you to the extent that they're able.
Mm.
And that will vary with what's going on in their lives. And and it's not personal. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you if they can't support you. It just
Mm.
means that maybe they don't have the bandwidth in a particular moment when you're in distress to help.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like um, a more truthful response.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. They were generally like the intention were good. They wanted to support and they were supporting, but to their extent that they could.
Always.
Yeah.
Always, yeah. Although, it's funny because like now I'm thinking back, but no, yes, I have to say that I have been very blessed with a very loving and supportive family, but we are all, human beings with our stuff. And
Mm.
so sometimes our stuff clashes against each other, but but absolutely I am grateful for my very loving family, and that's my immediate family and my extended family. There's a lot of love and care and good intentions.
Brilliant. And at the time you were facing these challenges, your daughter was young, right? How did you feel, going through your journey and still having to cater for a child?
Um, oh, I'm sorry, my gardener's just arrived.
That's okay.
If you can hear the noise, I'm not wearing headphones. I apologize for that. I didn't, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, let me see I'm going to just check in and see what
Yes.
wants to be
While
expressed.
you do that, I'll tell you why I'm asking. Is because a lot of listeners are women and their mothers. And I think sometimes we feel guilty when we have to work on our stuff if we have to cater for someone that can't do it for themselves, right? Like a child.
Right.
And
Okay,
yeah.
great. I see where you're going with that. Uh, I knew the whole time that the healthier I was, that my being healthy would benefit my daughter.
Mm.
And that, it's kind of like what they say on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first. Like, I always knew that was my part of my work was to fulfill my calling and to be as healthy and happy as I could be. And I also felt that that was my responsibility, that no one was going to do that for me, and that I had to do that. I had to do it for myself first and foremost. And then I hoped that I was modeling behavior that would be helpful for my daughter.
Mm. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Because they learn, not by what you say, but by what you do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
also, kids are their own people too. So you don't really know how what you do will influence them. But if you're being true to yourself and if you're showing up and really supporting yourself, then you're modeling how to show up and support yourself. You're modeling self-care, you're modeling taking responsibility. And I love that word responsibility because if you break it up, you have response ability, which is
Mm.
ability to respond. And really that's resilience.
Yeah.
You have choices. And this is another thing is that you have choices about how to respond. A lot of times I didn't even know I had growing up most of my life. I didn't know I had choices about how to respond to what was going on around me. I just would react.
Yeah.
And so learning that I have responsibility, um, that's super helpful in terms of keeping me grounded. Of course, I forget and I react, but I generally can catch myself. I usually, I mean, it's very rare that I'm upset for a long, like for a week. Like in the old days, like if I had a fight with my husband, we could be like in a passive aggressive standoff for weeks, right? Maybe
Mm.
not weeks, maybe a week. But now it's like if we have any kind of conflict, I'm thinking like I'm not taking it personally. I know it's not about me. I know that he's struggling in his own way. And I might just say, what can I do to help? And not
Mm.
take it personally and not think like, oh, I'm not a perfect wife. Oh, I said something that upset my husband. Oh my God, those days were exhausting.
Mm. Oh, yeah. I hear you. That's great. And that's such good advice. I think it's really helpful. As you said, we model example. We don't just, say it. This is why when you said, we have so many experts that tell us what to do and we think we need to listen, but we don't see behind the scenes most of the time. And it's great when parents are really the experts, but they have the chance to model by acting instead of just saying.
Yeah, and I'd like to add something to that.
Mm,
I've learned the hard way with just challenges that my daughter has gone through. I remember one time she was dealing with a difficult situation, and I was trying to manage and control it and her. And I sat down to write in my journal, which I always say my journal keeps me honest. And what I wrote in my journal was what makes you think you know what's best for your daughter?
mm,
Because she was, I don't know, a young adult at the time. She's still a young adult. But I thought, she has divine wisdom inside of her.
mm.
She's a separate person. She knows what's best for her. I may be her mother, but I don't know what's best for her. And it's really presumptuous and yucky of me. And that's where I was. I thought I did know what's best for her, but I don't know what's best for her. She knows what's best. Her divine intelligence knows what's best for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to check. I had to check in on that with my sister because she's younger, and I I tend to think that she should be doing things differently. But
And that
then,
I'm glad you're saying that because that goes for every loved one in our lives. We think we know what's best for them.
mm,
And that position is incredibly presumptuous.
mm,
Is everybody has their own inner wisdom and intelligence and guidance.
yeah,
Different people can access it to different degrees, but who are we to say what's best for anyone else?
no, we can't. If they make mistakes and they hurt, that's the learning curve. Like we had to learn, right?
Don't we all? I mean,
Yeah,
don't we all make mistakes? Isn't that how we learn? Aren't we enrolled in life school after all?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Beautiful. So let's go into the food because it's the first chapter of the book, and I know
I just want
you.
to clarify.
Yeah,
There's three sections. The first
sections,
section,
sections. That's what I
yeah.
meant. Yeah,
So the
yeah,
first section is body, the second section is mind, and the third spirit is
yeah.
section is spirit.
Mm.
And it focuses on healing on the different levels, body, mind, and spirit, because in fact my healing process started with a physical healing and then
Yeah,
moved to mental and spiritual healing.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I meant. The first part, that is body, and obviously the food was one of the things that you had to really delve into because, as you said, if my stomach is hurting, what am I putting in it that is hurting it? So you said at the beginning you definitely were resistant to going raw straight away, even if you saw many accounts that explain that's actually really the way to heal. And funny enough, because yesterday I interviewed Brenda Davis.
I
She's so
love that
lovely. I
work.
love
Yeah,
her.
great.
And she said, raw diets really are healing diets, and they're particularly good when somebody has to heal from a disease that could be cardiovascular disease or could be cancer. She doesn't necessarily recommend them as lifestyle because of the things that they do miss. But she said that we can all implement raw food. And I think I'm at that stage where, although I'm not fully raw, I wanted to learn more about raw, which is how I ended up on Christina's website, because there is so much goodness about it. And I must say that since I have more raw, I feel better. And the food is like this spiritual, if funny enough, catalyst, because
Well,
it's
the
the
food is alive.
is alive. Exactly. So when you gave up to the resistance and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, what was the first thing you thought? How were you prepared to actually dive into this new lifestyle and diet that you hadn't done before?
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate that I was desperate.
Mm.
Okay. I was desperate. So one of the first things I did, and I tell the story in the book, was my maternal ancestors are Italian, and pasta was definitely my comfort food growing up. And the first thing I decided to do was to make myself a plate of raw zucchini pasta.
Nice.
Yeah, so I got a Vitamix. I got, the equipment. I got a Vitamix blender. I got a dehydrator. I had a food processor. Um, I made this fresh sauce, tomato, basil, garlic, red pepper. I just made this lovely fresh sauce. And then I got this little spiralizing machine and I made some spiralized zucchini pasta. And it was lunchtime. And I actually put it in my fine china, which I usually reserve for special occasions and or just for dinner because I don't want my good china to not be used. But I put this plate of zucchini pasta in a Lenox bowl with a gold rim, and I went outside onto the back patio, and I sat there by myself and I ate this bowl of pasta. Now, in the past, what happened when I would eat a bowl of pasta would be I would feel like there was an elephant sitting on my chest.
Mm.
That's how I would feel eating a bowl of pasta. But when I ate this bowl of pasta, not only didn't I feel the elephant sitting on my chest, but I kind of did have a spiritual experience. And that is that everything in my backyard suddenly felt alive, like the trees and the plants and the flowers and the sky. Everything felt vivid, as if I had been sitting in the backyard, like in a car with a dirty windshield. And then somebody cleaned the windshield and I could see. That was one of my early experiences with raw food, was that I could literally feel the life of the food. I was the food. I was this living thing and everything around me was more alive. And that was an incredible feeling. It was, yeah, I mean, it was really incredible. It's funny because, I too am not 100% raw anymore. Um, and by the way, I want to just put out there that anybody who has disordered eating should not be contemplating a raw food diet
Mm.
because people can get into trouble. So I would just say, like, if you have any history or proclivities for eating disorders, this may not be the way to go. I mean, it's always good to add more living food to your diet, but in terms of limiting what you can eat, you have that is a consideration that I just want to point out.
I'm
But
happy you say that because I had anorexia when I was younger, and then I had a very, very bad relationship with food in my 20s. And I was thinking maybe I could try raw, fully raw, but I saw myself already being like, okay, I can't have this, I can't have that, and being very restrictive and then obsessed about what I was having. And I thought, I can't do that to myself.
well,
Um, yeah.
yeah, I'm so glad that you're saying that because I think it's really, really important. And obviously you were paying attention and listening, and that is super important.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so it's great to eat, I always say like eat more live food, eat more fruits. And I even tell myself this. Sometimes I get sloppy and I don't do that. But eating more, like adding, it's like it's not like depriving yourself.
Mm.
It's like add more fresh fruits and vegetables to your diet. It can only help you, unless, like I said, unless you have disordered eating history or patterns or thinking, then that's not a great idea. But I do want to share a story with you.
Yeah.
After, I don't know, I think I was raw for 4 or 5 years. And then I was like, you know what? My stomach's feeling better. I miss warm food. I want to have something warm, And I remember that I think I made like some stir-fried vegetables and tofu and some quinoa. And I hadn't had cooked grains in 5 years. And I made this dish. I went out onto the front porch. I sat there by myself and I was eating this food. And after the meal, I felt very relaxed. I felt very sleepy. And I realized that the food was acting like a drug,
Mm.
that it actually was soothing. And what's the word I'm thinking of? It was like anesthetizing. It was tranquilizing.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, this isn't such a bad thing if I want to feel tranquil, to eat some quinoa.
Mhm.
Like that felt really interesting and good. And I think at the end of the day, um, what helps me is thinking like, how can I nourish myself? Because I don't always. Sometimes, I just want to watch Netflix and eat a bowl of popcorn.
Mm. Which is perfectly good for you.
Yeah, exactly. And like I know how I feel. Like I feel like this body of mine is extremely sensitive.
Mm.
Feel like I can feel I think the important thing is to bring conscious awareness to eating,
Mm.
whatever you're eating. And it's so I think like we tend in this culture to just eat without consciousness. Like we're thinking about a million things, we're thinking about our to-do list, we're engaged in conversation, but we're not really thinking, we're not experiencing gratitude. Wow, this food is delicious and it's nourishing. And maybe it's not so nourishing or maybe it's not so delicious, but wow, isn't it great to be able to feed myself?
Mm.
And maybe we can't always feed ourselves the best food, but we're doing our best. Maybe we're sick or tired or we don't have the energy, and so I think it's actually more important to be loving with ourselves around nourishment, around the idea of nourishment. And food is that. Food is nourishment. And, and it's pleasure and it's companionship. And so I think to just be really gentle around our relationship to nourishment and food, I think that's really more important than actually what you eat in some ways.
Yeah, I've noticed in the past as well that when I came out of my disordered eating, I was binging every weekend and I was very strict through the week. I was working out 2 hours a day. I just was not in a good place. But when I met my now husband, he was very calming as a person. So we started eating at home together and really enjoying the calm conversations, or just sitting there and enjoying the food without talking. And I started noticing that the approach I had to food, because it had changed, the food was being different to me. It was soothing me. It was nourishing me. Even if it sometimes, I mean, it was still animal products at the time. I only went plant-based 10 years ago. Um, so it was still animal products at the beginning, but I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel horrible after. My digestion was fine. And I was like, wow, the approach I had to that experience of having food versus when I was alone and I was eating quickly and I was in a rush and I was eating from the TV or computer or email, whatever. And it just changed everything. So you're right. The way that we eat, like that consciousness, that mindfulness around our food is one of the keys, whether you're eating a raw dish, a plant-based dish, or something else.
So I love that you said that. And I want to share a story with you. when my book came out, I was asked to write an article for, I don't remember the publication, but it was a vegan publication. And they wanted me to write an article and they gave me the title. The title was something like, 5 reasons a vegan diet is the best diet for you. Right. And I had a problem with that title. And I don't remember. I mean, it's been a while, but I think I wanted to write the piece. I just didn't like the title.
Mm.
So I think that was the title. And I think my first sentence was something like, I can't tell you what the best diet for you is. Nobody can. But I can tell you that for me, a vegan diet has been the best, a raw vegan diet has been the best for me. And this is why. But this is just for me. And it goes back to that idea of what makes me think I know what's best for anyone else. And I have chosen a vegan diet and I have been on a vegan diet for, I don't know, 20 years. And this is the diet that makes me feel the best in my body, this is just what works for me. But I will not say to anyone else that this is what will work best for you because I don't know. And, there are medical people and there are, dietary experts and all that. I am not that. I don't pretend to be that. I don't claim to be that. My book is a memoir about my experience, my healing experience, and it is personal, and maybe it has universal significance in some ways. We're all human. We all go through our own healing processes. But I am not here to say that anybody needs to eat a vegan diet or a raw vegan diet, to heal. Because everybody, we all have within us our own inner guidance system that tells us how we need to heal. I can only say this is what worked for me, but I don't know what's going to work for you. And you can trust your inner guidance to tell you, if eating like chicken for dinner 3 times a week fills you with joy and makes your body feel good, then I'm not going to say that this is not a good diet.
Yeah, I think emotionally what you said makes perfect sense, the we can't even in my practice I educate people about whole food plant-based diets, but I also say I cannot force you to do it. But what I can suggest is that you increase your plant foods because ultimately this is what they do for you that animal products can't. But I will never be able to force anybody to give them up fully if they don't want to. And I think wanting to do something because then you know your why is the key. Because if somebody forces you to do something, you'll build up resentment. You will not even agree with the food probably because there is this somatic reaction to what you're eating because it doesn't come from you. So I think it's really important to have that personal choice, with everything. Like we need choice. If we don't have choice, it doesn't sit right.
Absolutely. And the other thing is like we have to have awareness. Like sometimes I can get sloppy with my diet, and I say sloppy because plant-based, like if I'm eating processed, I mean like a little bit maybe, but I can feel when I'm eating whole food plant-based versus processed plant-based.
Yeah.
I feel it. I could feel it. But what I was going to say something else about awareness. Um, yeah, like let's take, excuse me. Let's take, for example, someone who wants to lose weight, right? They start to like they may have a lot of willpower, and they may think like, oh, I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to eat this. And eventually, though, if there's that, you can get that feeling of deprivation, like I'm depriving myself. I really want that. Like, and then they think about, and I guess I'm saying they, but I think I've had this experience myself in my life because I was a dancer when I was younger and I had to maintain a certain figure, and so I was aware of these kinds of things and sort of plagued by them. Like I would think of the like foods that weren't super nourishing as treats. But I think what happened when I did the, when I got sick basically and realized I want to live, I want to eat to live, not live to eat.
Mm.
I want to feel good. And that was the only thing that was motivating this whole journey I went on was I want to feel good. And food was just the first place where I started with that journey. So what can I eat that will make me feel good? Because eating potato chips and M&Ms didn't help me feel good.
Yeah.
Or stopping at 7-Eleven to get like a chocolate bar for energy. Maybe it felt good for 10 minutes, but then crash. So I really had to so I educated myself and I read a lot about nutrition. And what I learned, what shifted for me was that different things became my comfort foods. And 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 treats were no longer the foods that I went to earlier in my life for comfort and pleasure. I started finding new comfort foods, and I'm sitting here thinking, what were my comfort foods when I was 100% raw? Uh, I really liked warm soups,
Mm.
like I would make in
Vitamin.
my Vitamix, and I would just let it run for a while so that they would be warm.
Mm.
I also made raw flaxseed crackers
Mm.
uh, that I enjoyed a lot, and I made some raw breads as well. But I'm trying to think, what were my, like nuts and seeds, um, like a handful of almonds became like a treat.
Mm.
Where I wasn't raised thinking that a handful of almonds could be nourishing or even delicious. But I got to that point where, yeah, that was nice. Or I would make wraps with leaves and I would make pâtés, yummy, delicious pâtés, um, smoothies, and it was delicious and fresh juices. And like, as I'm saying this, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get off this call and I'm
And
gonna
go
go make
eat.
coffee. I mean, it's like, but I actually had some of those delicious, nourishing, like I felt like I was nourishing myself in a way that I never had in my life when I
Mm.
is transitioned to this raw food, plant-based diet.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with banana and ice creams. I love bananas. That you heard the conversation I had with Dr. Clapper. I had to ask him if one can have too many bananas. I was happy to hear no. And I
So many
loved.
people, I love bananas. So many people, there's like such debate over bananas. And I'm like, give me a break. Like, and if you love it,
I love it.
banana.
So someone said to me, it's too much sugar. I'm like, well, my sugar is better now that I eat like 10 bananas a day than it was before.
Yeah,
So,
I would say like if you're worried about that, like my mom used to like say, "Oh, I can't eat avocados because of the cholesterol." But she ate cheese and she ate milk and she had milk in her coffee and she had, meat and I mean it, whatever.
yeah.
But again, it's her choice.
Yeah.
And, it's hard when you've educated, it's hard when you've read widely in the area of health and nutrition. And people, for me, this was a big challenge. Like socially, the raw food diet was very difficult.
I wanted to
Uh,
ask you that because that's 20 years ago, right? When you
yeah.
went into it. So the scene now is so easy. Like every restaurant will have vegan options and raw options. But how was it then?
Oh, that just didn't exist. And all of the processed vegan foods that we have today, like I can go to a restaurant and order a vegan meal that has, some processed food. And I mean, then, first of all, I would carry food with me everywhere.
Mm.
But my in-laws, like, oh my God, and my relatives, like being with my relatives, they just thought I was crazy. They just thought and I tried, I explained, like, I'm having chronic stomach problems. This helps my stomach. So that's kind of hard to argue with.
Mm.
But they just thought, like, they just thought, yeah, I was nuts. I mean, they just didn't understand. And, and in some ways, like, I had my judgments about what they were eating too. But I tried not to. I mean, I'm sure that I sometimes screwed up. I'm sure that I sometimes just wasn't like the loving, compassionate presence, accepting. I know that there were probably plenty of times when my stuff got triggered and I was less than grounded and clear and calm and present. But that was challenging. That just being perceived by others as being crazy. Although I do think also there were people also in my life who respected what I was doing and told me so and appreciated it. I did lose a bunch of weight, which had not been my intention. But I enjoyed this lightness of being that I experienced. I did. I felt I enjoyed that as well. But there were also people that were, saying you're too skinny. And I knew that I wasn't in an eating disorder situation. I mean, I didn't know anything about eating disorders. Hadn't been a part of my life. I didn't really know anything about it. But I knew what I was doing was right for me. And I knew that I felt really well nourished and I felt healthier and more energized than I had been in a long time. So there was enough that was working in terms of like, this feels good to me, that kept me going for 5 years. And then, after that time, I was like, you know what? I really do. I feel good. And I miss some foods. I missed tofu. Well, at that time, they didn't even have like the different kinds of pastas that are available, like gluten-free pasta, because I think I must have a gluten sensitivity.
Possible, yeah.
But I didn't realize that because now like I can have gluten-free pasta. I can have but not two big bowls full like I used to.
Mm.
My body just rejects that. It just says I feel shitty. I have this pressure in my chest. I feel like I can't breathe. Like I can't. But I don't get that. Like if I can have a small amount of gluten-free pasta and feel fine. I can have, like the seaweed pasta and the kelp noodles. I can have those kinds of noodles, which is really great because I missed noodles.
Yeah.
Like zucchini noodles, which I don't know, like they just have a different consistency. So yeah, so it's been quite a journey with the food. And I'm just reminded as I'm talking about all of this that there's so much delicious, nourishing, plant-based, vegan food available today. And it's what makes me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree and relate. I'm the same. I must say that I had a weekend where we had a lot of cooked food because we were eating out. I have a friend that was visiting, and I did miss my salad because I have this massive salad a day. Like I just love it, and it's like I just need it, and I missed it so badly. I never thought. I said tomorrow morning my breakfast is gonna be a big bowl of fruit. I don't want to hear a thing. I can't eat a cooked thing anymore. And it was so funny because I never thought I would even say that. To me, raw was inconceivable
Yeah.
before.
I like it. It's funny that you should say that because it reminds me the first time I was exposed to the idea of fruit in the morning, and there was a good reason for that, was Harry and Marilyn Diamond. In the 80s, they wrote a book called Fit for Life. And I read that book, and they said it's really good to eat fruit on an empty stomach. And the reason that is because when you put fruit on top of so fruit digests very quickly. You know all this, but I'll just say what I learned.
Oh, please.
So I learned that fruit digests very quickly. If you heat fruit at the end of a meal, the other food that's in there, it takes longer to digest. And so things start to ferment. So that's not good. So the best time to eat fruit is on an empty stomach. And the best, the time when your stomach is the emptiest is in the morning. So fruit for breakfast is a great idea. And so that's when I started with fruit for breakfast. And I kind of, where I am right now is I kind of like this raw before four.
Yeah.
I kind of like having fruit for breakfast and maybe some tea and a big salad for lunch. And I could put beans in my salad if I want, or I could put like falafel, or I could put something in but mostly like I need a big bowl of greens for lunch, or I like it. Like this is my optimal functioning diet.
Mm.
Big salad for lunch. And then for dinner, I can do some cooked vegan food. If I want to do a processed food, I can do a processed food. But I also like to have vegetables, and maybe they're steamed or stir fried or whatever. But maybe it's tofu, maybe it's the fake chicken, whatever I want, and if I want some gluten-free noodles, or if I want some quinoa, or if I want some like those miracle noodles, like fine, I'm going to do that. And then at night, like I might allow myself like just a little treat of some kind of like a little square of raw chocolate, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I do sometimes like popcorn when I'm watching Netflix. But but yeah, I mean, I just feel like again, this is not a prescription.
Mm.
This is me sharing my personal feelings about food, and this comes from having read, over maybe 100 books about nutrition, and that's it doesn't make me, I don't say that I'm an expert, but I am pretty widely read in the field, and I've read a lot in the field of nutrition. But I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not a health coach. I'm a writing and creativity coach, and I help people get out of their own way so that what wants to come through them can come through, and we look at that on the level of body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, as I know I'm taking so much of your time, but did you feel that changing your diet also opened up your creativity? Do you feel like you had more to give? You were receiving more and maybe sharing more?
Well, absolutely, because it has to do with my overall health.
Mm.
And so, what I bring to my own creative work as a writer and as a coach and as a teacher, because I teach creative writing,
Mm.
what I can only bring what I've got to give.
Mm.
And, so that has to do with how well nourished I am, how calm I am, how grounded and centered I am, like what I bring to the table, is very much a reflection of how I care for my body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, I would say that a plant-based diet definitely can embodies all of those elements that I needed, because I definitely found that when I changed my diet, there was a lot of anxiety and pent up anger that wasn't mine. I mean, not that I don't get angry, but it wasn't my anger, it wasn't my frustration, it wasn't my dark feelings. It came from somewhere else, and when those animal products left my body, those feelings left too. So I think that
Yeah,
is, yeah.
I do want to say, as I'm listening to you talking, and again, this is just for me.
Mm.
This is not for anybody else. This is just for me. Uh, I learned about some of the ways the animals are treated, and also what the hormones that they're given.
Mm.
And I just didn't want to take that into my body,
Mm.
because I just felt like, and I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, and I'm not like a whole food, plant-based educator. But when I started to learn about what actually goes on, like in the meat industry and in the dairy industry, I was like, "Ooh, I'm glad I'm not eating that stuff."
Yeah.
Because it was very, it was, it was, the word that comes to my mind is violent
Yeah, it is.
and murderous, and I just didn't. I like, that's not why I changed. I wasn't thinking of those things when I changed my diet. But I didn't want. I'm glad that I'm not participating in that, and I'm not like holier than thou, because I probably participate in things that aren't so great for the planet and for life. But we make our own choices based on what makes sense in any given moment in our lives. And if I were to say that I wanted to advocate for anything, I would say I advocate for love. I
Mm.
advocate for peace and compassion, and how can we create peace first within ourselves? And that is our responsibility, and that is an inside job. And there's never going to be peace in the world if we're not paying attention and waking up to the role that we play just within our own relationship to ourselves. And that's what I am, that's what I am advocating. I am saying, let's take responsibility for our response ability.
That's a beautiful way to end the conversation. Thank you so much, Bella. It was so nice to have you on. I loved our conversation. You have so much to share. It comes through your writing, as I said at the beginning, and I'm really, really honored that you took the time to speak to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful being with you.
See you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bella, and thank you everyone for staying on for this episode. I hope you were as inspired as I was by it, and I can tell you this was not scripted, but it just did flow without a glitch because it came from the heart. So I love the conversation. If you liked the episode, please do share, like, and give us a review, and check out the show notes for all the details on Bella's work, because I think her books are such an amazing resource to have at home for our own journey. So guys, I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.